Welcome to the Soccer Geeks podcast, hosted by Jason Barbato.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Soccer Geeks podcast. I am your host, Jason Barbato. Alongside me is the best producer in the business, Miss Marissa Callie. Marissa, how are we doing today?
Doing well. Glad to be here with you again virtually, and super excited for today's interview. I think I feel like I say that every time, but I really am. Like just hearing people and how they can have an impact in the soccer community, what they're doing. You know, it's all good for me. So. Yeah.
When you're talking about soccer developing in our country and it's evolving every day, there's an exciting conversation to be had with every person that's involved. And that's my personal feeling.
Right.
So you have a relationship with our guest today,
Yes.
and some familiarity. So I'd love for you to be able to kind of talk a little bit about that and then bring her on the show. So
Sure. Yeah. Amy Schweizer. She's a military spouse, mom, former soccer player, and she's a business owner. I met her in September of 2019, I believe, before the world shut down, in DC at a conference. And we bonded over soccer and content and being women business owners. And we've just remained in touch. And I'm super happy to have her on the show because I think she's going to give some really good insights into development, soccer as a whole, and I'm really happy that we can chat with her today.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Why don't you bring her on the show? Let's get her out here.
Hi, Amy.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Happy to have you, Amy. Welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Enjoy your conversation. I will be back towards the end and talk to you soon.
See you, Marissa.
Thanks, Marissa. Amy, I can't wait to get into it. You know, there's a lot of ways there I could say that the focus of your business and your growth and your heart towards the game is near and dear to my heart, having family members that are also in the military, and I've got nieces and nephews across. Actually, I just have nephews, no nieces. My sister's pregnant, but we just found out it's a girl, so I keep thinking I'm having
No
a niece with her. But so excited to hear about kind of what you do for in the game of soccer for military families. But before we get into that, I'd love for you just to share a little bit about your pathway as a player and just as a professional being involved in the game, if you don't mind sharing that with our audience this morning.
Yeah, of course. So I actually didn't touch a soccer ball like ever in my life until I was 16 years old, my sophomore year of high school. And that is because they didn't have girls soccer in my hometown until then. So I'm from a small town in Illinois. And so at that point, I was on the basketball team and they were like, okay, we're starting a soccer team. We need some of the athletes to join the soccer team because there were no soccer players. So we were like, sure, we'll do it. So it just happened to be the sport I loved the most and was the best at. And so I went from high school, first time ever touching a soccer ball, to I played D3, and then I was able to play in the WUSL for a season in Cincinnati after that. So that was my path to soccer. In between there, always helping with camps, coaching at my local, rec association, and being involved with it. So that was just kind of the background. Currently, I run Tiny Troop Soccer, a developmental program that's across the country and overseas. So soccer, near and dear to my heart. Developmental, proper training, age-appropriate soccer is very near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. Now, you in college, you say you went to a D3 school, but you got your degree in sports management during that time as well, correct?
Yeah, so my undergrad's in finance actually, but I went on after playing in the WSL. I went to grad school and I got my degree in sport management there. And I was always thinking I would be headed to work for a pro team and community relations. That's what I wanted to do. I did get to intern with the Philadelphia Kicks, the pro indoor team when I was there. So that was really cool.
Okay. And I mean, not to pry or ask too many questions, but for you, were you married when you were working, towards your degree in sports management? Was that kind of after your playing career? When did that kind of timeline us here meeting your husband, who's a service member?
Yeah, so that was actually afterwards, which, Jason, we probably don't have enough time to talk about military spouse employment.
Sure.
But, my career was totally headed that way.
Okay.
Met my husband and things got a little bit thwarted.
Yeah. So, but maybe thwarted or maybe directed. Like that's left up to history, right, to look at it. So I'm scoring points with your hubby there for you. Pat him on the back.
We'll appreciate that. We'll appreciate
Yeah. So then you military spouse. Part of just that life is that you've got deployments every couple years, really, that get changed. You could be at a number of military bases across the world. You have this degree in sports management and finance. Your military wife, you see lots of other, military wives living on base and lots of kids and things like that. When you started kind of having played soccer, not being introduced to it to an older age, you kind of start honing in on seeing that need. Can you tell us a little bit about where you started to see the need that birthed the idea of Tiny Troop Soccer?
Yeah. So one, having started so late and being pretty talented at it, I always thought, man, if I would have started sooner, like where, how much further could I have gone with this? So that was always an underlying thought in my head. What actually brought me to starting Tiny Troops was the need for social interaction and physical activity for both my son and myself. We were actually in Okinawa, Japan, stationed there. And man, we needed to get out of the house and I wanted to work. And, we all know that soccer and physical activity also benefits mental health and emotional health. And so we really needed that to happen. And there was a lack of developmental programming, a lack of any programming really for kids under the age of 5. And ours is not like a super strict program. I don't believe in that young, but we do a lot of the developmental activities, even just like, hey, let's like learn how to run without falling over, right? Like, let's get these things down, these foundational things we need to be that are age appropriate to move into soccer. So that's kind of where it started. And then once we, once I got it going, there was just more and more, like the need was evident. The demand was evident. People were just coming out. So I had to hire more coaches. Then once we all started moving back stateside, it kind of just, I said, we need this everywhere. We need programming for our younger kids everywhere. So that's how it started.
Now, were there other programs for other sports, or was this just kind of across the board for kind of the age? And honestly, a lot of the moms need socialization too when husbands are deployed and things like that. And even some of the dads, if the wives are the ones that are deployed, they need social interaction. So was this just across the board on military bases, or was this specifically like there was a void in regards to soccer?
Really across the board, and just since soccer's my thing, and that's what started.
There's a handful of soccer educators in the country that are pretty popular that really focus on this young age group. Can you talk a little bit to who kind of are the biggest influencers for you as you were developing a curriculum and as you were kind of creating the passion and the heart behind your program? Can you kind of talk a little to that effect?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say there was one specific person. It actually started in grad school with my project, like the final project. I started a program, Tiny Tot Soccer. So not Tiny Troops, but Tiny Tot. And what that is a series of like 4 foot by 3 foot posters, like with this graphic on it that has basic skills like Sally the octopus says, walk across these beams. And so it was actually a whole project where soccer associations can set up this area and their tagline is, if you can walk, you can play. And so I had done so much research into what are the things like balance, coordination, those things will our kids need later on the soccer field. And so I created a whole program of that. And so they've been running that for the past, I don't want to date myself, like 15 or 20 years since grad school. Sure. And so it was kind of an easy transition for me because I already had all the research and knowledge into it to start Tiny Troops, which is the actual like in-person session, coaching sessions.
Yeah. Can you share with us maybe a story or two of some kids or some families that kind of stand out to you through the years that you've just seen a lot of just the benefits of being part of the program that you've created?
Yeah. So even just the other day, one of our coaches got a text message with a video of their U10 player. And it said, look, this all started with you with Tiny Troops, 6 years ago. And so there's so many times, like at games, I'll hear parents say at the rec league games, I'll hear parents say, man, these kids just need to know the fundamentals. And in my mind, I'm like, yes, I know. Like, that's exactly what we need. Right. So we get messages like that from parents all the time. My son started in my program at 3 and, is on championship teams now and rec leagues. And so we get that all the time. And even the not soccer skill stuff, we get feedback on. So the other day we got a text that said, my kid was at hockey practice and they weren't quite listening. The coach wasn't really controlling it. And so he looked at me and I, pulled my ears, like listening ears, because they know that's what we do at our soccer practices. And he did it back and then started focusing. So, we try to lay that foundation that, yes, we're teaching soccer skills, but we're teaching them how to be a part of a team, listen to a coach, listen to someone besides mom or dad. So we see success stories like that all the time.
Yeah. And it's so great to get kids out and interacting with sport and also reinforce a lot of the, the things that parents would love to see for the kids. Yeah. Good active listening, engaged listening, and, kind of teaching and then performing, kind of what you're asking them to do. Can you talk a little bit just to some of the, give our listeners kind of a better understanding of what it's like and some of the dynamics of just living on base across the world? You've lived, I imagine, in probably a half dozen different bases across the world and country. But can you kind of speak a little bit to what it's like being a spouse and a mom and raising kids on a military base?
Yeah, so you're right. We've been to quite a few. So we've been married about 12 years now. And so we've been to California, Okinawa, Japan, Hawaii, and then now we're in North Carolina. So we've definitely jumped around quite a bit. And so I explained bases. They're all, it's their own city. It's its own city. So you have the grocery store, which we call the commissary. You have the exchange, which is what we like a mall, you would call it. So, you have everything in that one, especially when you go overseas. Like when we lived in Japan, people said, well, what's it like? And I said, well, really on base, it's pretty Americanized. But then when you go off, you're like, oh yeah, I'm in a different country. I kind of forgot about that. So, you have that. It's certainly a community within a community. I think you make relationships quicker because you kind of have to. Like, it's not like I'm with my family and I can put my best friend for 10 years can be my kid's school contact. I don't know a single person, but I need an emergency contact. So the person you see at the park, you're like, yeah, we chatted a bit. And you're like, hey, can I, what's your phone number? Can I put you down as my... And you're like, oh yeah, wait, what was your last name again? And literally, that's who you put. So it's definitely a different, unique experience. And you do have limited access to things. So that's one thing, kind of a hole I saw in programming was, we go through one community services, like that's who runs our sports. And there's probably one season a year. So, and that's all you would get. So maybe two months of soccer, 2 months of basketball. So there's not really the same equitable access to sport for our military kids as there are our civilian kids.
Yeah. How are parks and field space and grass space and open space and stuff like that? How's that on bases? Are there soccer fields? Are there football fields? Are there baseball fields? What is that? I know it's a city, almost like an island unto itself, its own cultural island unto itself. But can you talk a little bit to that effect of just the space for kids to be able to play on base?
Yeah. So there's definitely a lot of fields because sports is a big thing for the service members as well. So, you have Marine teams, so they always want to keep them active. So there's definitely space. However, because it's federal government property, there's a lot of restrictions as to what that space can be used for. So if it's, the 2 months of soccer sanctioned by the base, then that's going to be running on the base. But if it's a program like mine, that's technically a private entity, you don't just have access to use the base. So then we usually have to go off base because of all the legalities. So Is there room? Yes. Do we have access to that? Not really.
Yeah, which is a huge challenge because sometimes in my experience, sometimes a lot of spouses don't have access off base.
And that's, and some just kind of
coming by with the minivan. Do you have a Tiny Tots bus that you come by and pick up and select kids?
No, but I do have a minivan, which I absolutely love now, but I was totally one of those ones at first that I was like, I don't know. But now I'm the ultimate soccer mom. So not only do I have am I a soccer player? And I still play. I played indoor on Sunday, Jason, I've had to take a bath every night. I mean, man, you would think I'm like 80 years old right now, but so not only am I a soccer player, I own a soccer business. I coach my son's rec league sometimes. So like I have the van. I am the ultimate soccer mom right now.
That's awesome. I think it's great. There's no shame in that as far as I'm
concerned.
No,
not at all.
Can there's always the stories that we see of professional players that, had military parents. They grew up kind of playing around the world on military bases, and in the being introduced to soccer through the cultures that were kind of an extension, whether they were in Europe or Germany or things like that, or Spain. Can you talk a little bit to, once players kind of are developed in your program, how smooth is it for a transition for families to find quote unquote competitive or club or even recreational teams on base? Are they really forced to go off base? What does that look like?
So most of the time they are forced to go off base. And that's simply because, the same problem persists in civilian on base and off base, lack of coaches, right? So that's a big problem. So especially there, it's a lot of people may get voluntold is what we call it. Like, so the service members may be like, well, nope, you got to do this, but they don't know anything about soccer, right? Or whatever they're coaching. And so there's definitely, Jason, remind me what your first question was. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Talking about club, kids being able to play club or rec on or off base, how easy it is access for those families. You're a parent, you kind of, you got the minivan, you got to schlep them on and off base. So kind of to that dynamic,
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. So my program, Tiny Troop Soccer, we say we are preparing your kids to successfully move into a recreational program. And so that's our goal, is to give them all that stuff. So most of the time, people will access the local leagues in their areas off base. And competitive, though, that's a little different, Jason, because, unfortunately, a lot of times it can be political, and the kids off base have had the chance to grow up with that same team for 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years, right? So, the positions are kind of taken. We know mom and dad, like this is what it is. So you have a new kid as a military kid trying to come into that competitive program, and there's definitely some barriers. Like you really have to prove yourself, So it can get a little dicey, honestly.
Yeah, I just always wonder how that would look. You got kids that have families that are stationed again across Europe and Okinawa, Japan, and things like that. Like, what are the opportunities there for kids to really grow through sport, whether it's soccer or baseball or football or rugby or whatever it would be, on or off base. Just that dynamic, I think, is interesting to kind of know what options there are for the kids of service members. What would you say for yourself, kind of what's the long-term vision that you hope for Tiny Troops? Whether it be on base, off base, where are you trying to grow towards with your company today?
Yeah, so we've been fortunate enough to run at about 50 locations. So they're all near military installations, but they're open to civilian and military alike. So we're really trying to foster that community connection because a lot of times, like in the surveys that are done and stuff, military families feel like they're on an island, even if they live out in the community, because we're like, oh, we're going to leave in 6 months, so I'll just make friends at my next duty station. You don't put effort in. And then also, conversely, a lot of civilian people know we're leaving, and so they don't put much effort into us either. And so we're really trying to foster that sense of community and support between civilian and military families. So we're trying to do that and expanding to more locations. So ideally, we would be near most every military base, which that's a lofty goal for sure. But that's what we're trying to do. So we run year round besides December. And so we try to give our kids access to play, no matter if they have to go home for a month of leave and then come back, or, the PCS, which is moving and they miss the sign up, so now they can't play for 5 months. Like, we're trying to give equitable access year round so that our players get the experience, so that, when it's time for competitive club, at least they have some good training that they can take with them.
Currently, how many military bases are you guys, do you have Tiny Troops programs across the country and world? How many do you guys have right now?
So we've run up to 50. So we're in
50. Okay.
Yep, we're in 17 states and a couple countries.
That's fantastic. And if you were to have, I don't know what the number is, but if you were to have Tiny Troops at every base in the country and world, kind of what would that grow from 50 to what? What are we looking at? More than 100?
Oh yeah, definitely more than 100. Yeah.
Okay. And outside of just having voluntold people to kind of take the mantle, what do you kind of see as the biggest obstacle? Is it just getting the word out? Is it civilians kind of seeing the need and jumping on board? I mean, how does that kind of look like? Where are the kind of the roadblocks to growth in that regard?
Well, I don't know that this is particular to the military. I think it's the whole coaching landscape that we have going on now. We have a lack of coaches and a lack of referees. And a lot of times because of the behavior of parents, right? So we see referees declining because they're like, I don't get paid enough to deal with that craziness, right? Nor do they want to put their teens in a situation to potentially have to deal with an adult losing their mind, right? So we're losing access to referees, and then coaches. It seems like, it's the same ones of us who are always putting in. So at some point, like with me, I'm like, my husband's leaving this month and I have these 3 kids and like, I just can't right now. So like, we need other people to step up. I actually just created a training program, Jason, and it's for, the tagline says like, were you just coerced into coaching your child's wrestling and you have no idea what to do, right? So I put together this training a video portion that we actually use for my coach trainers in Tiny Troop Soccer. We put some session plans, minute by minute on there. Here's what the field is here, just quick, like, here's what you can do. We know you don't have a lot of time. We appreciate what you're doing. Like, here's everything you need. So, I think that's one thing too, is some people, I hear a lot, like, I would volunteer, but I have no idea. And it's not that we want those coaches, right? But if we can arm them with information they can actually utilize, that's easy to digest and they can, easy to put into action, then that would be helpful.
How do you, so a couple questions. One, what does the curriculum look like? What's the length of the curriculum for Tiny Troops? Is it, 30, 60, 90? Is it, you said you run year round, but how do you balance kind of the kids that come into the program, kids who've been there for 6 months? How do you kind of balance all the fundamentals across the board? Like, what does the program look like?
Yeah. So we run year round, depending on weather and the locations, but so ours is a month-to-month basis. So we treat each month like it's a brand new month, like you haven't been there. And with our age of kids, Jason, that's not a problem because they need repetition. They need to learn to be comfortable with the ball at their foot. So when they move into rec, then they can start to think of those concepts that they're actually now able to conceptualize. Like they don't know what passing to an open player means when they're 4 years old. They just think, here's a ball, I want that ball, and that's it. And so we really focus on that. And so we tell our parents, like, the skills you'll see month to month aren't going to change. Now the activities we do and the way we do them, that'll change. And honestly, we get a lot of people, Jason, that retrospectively are like, hey, we weren't quite sure like how this was soccer, because they want to see their kid playing soccer, like the traditional. And I'm like, no, not at this age. Like, they don't get it. It's the one kid who can run fast and dribble, and that's all that's happening, right? So that's not beneficial. So
that doesn't change outside of that age group, by the way, just in my experience. It's everybody just loves the kid that runs, and just wants the ball and puts it in the back of the
net. And that's not the sport, right? So so parents will come back and say, we weren't sure, but oh my gosh, like, my kid is heads and shoulders above everybody else dribbling the ball and like sitting and listening to the coach, and just things that people don't think of as soccer, but like, your kid needs to know this to be successful on a team. So you don't, like, parents don't know that they don't want to see this. Like, you don't want to see this right now in that game. You want to see them developing these skills that they can then apply to the game later.
What would you say? I mean, I love it. As we're chatting, I'm going to have to grab a piece of paper because there's questions I want to ask and I don't want to forget, and they'll fall out.
No problem.
Leaky brain. Tell me a little bit about the skills that you feel, 3 to 5 year olds. What are some of the most fundamental skills that kids need to be able to be successful long-term in the game?
Yeah. And so many people, Jason, say, well, little kid soccer, anyone can teach little kids soccer. Or what are you even teaching them? How can they play soccer? Man,
It's
does
like
that
herding cats. Do you know how hard it is?
Everyone says that. And it burns me to the core because I made up soccer integrity, that term. So my coaches, I don't hire anybody who hasn't played soccer before in some sense, because I know that we know that teaching X, Y, and Z now is going to later lead to this harder concept. Whereas if you don't have that soccer experience, you're not going to be able to put that connection together and guide the kids. So the fundamental things, man, working on balance and coordination. So, we throw little balance beams out there and we're doing different balancing games, and we're doing games that, they have to pick up something while they're dribbling the ball. So we're using both right and left brains. We're working on things that are locomotor skills, like how my body moves, like vestibular input. So how am I responding to the different things around me? So those are all skills. Kids need them for activities of daily living, right? But they also need them to be a successful, stable body soccer player. So those are a lot of the gross motor skills we're focusing on. Soccer-wise, dribbling. Right? We can't do anything in soccer without being able to dribble. So every child has a ball at our sessions. We don't have lines. We are trying to get them as many touches on the ball as possible. So like I said earlier, they're comfortable with that ball at their foot, and then later can move on to the gameplay concepts. So dribbling, super important. And then at this age, and even as they go up, is being able to operate independently of mom and dad. So, a lot of them at this age haven't done anything outside of the home, like maybe not even school yet or anything. So they're used to mom being by my side and when we're doing this. And so our parents are required to be there, but we actually say, stay off the field. Like if we need you, we'll ask you, which is very different because a lot of times it's only the parent has to be involved. So we have to kick the parents off the field. We're like, no, we're trying to teach your kid to work without you and to listen to me as a coach, so we're teaching those things that parents don't know that they want, but it's like, if you want your kid to be a good soccer player, this is what you need. And so when they're like, well, you guys don't even play the soccer game, because we scrimmage for about 5 minutes at the end of our things. Yeah, and that's simply to give the kids an idea, a feel of it, but also really to appease the parents, Jason, because that's what they signed up. That's what they want to see. But I'm just like, no. So I really try to educate them. No, this is what you want to see.
Right. Before you go play the game, you have to actually know kind of how to act and operate. Before you play chess, you got to know what everybody can do on the field, or on the board, I should say. Can you tell me a little bit about parent education in the game of soccer? You didn't start playing till you were, like you said, 16 years old. I doubt your parents had a great understanding or wealth of knowledge in regards to the game of soccer. And the typical thing I see on the sideline, like you said, parents will cheer athleticism, speed, size, strength, without having a context of being able to know what they're watching so that they can give positive encouragement. Can you talk about how parent education, first of all, where do you think parent education is on base, off base, like in the game in our country right now? And then can you talk about it kind of advancing the ball down the field a little bit, as it were, in regards to parent education, like what you'd love to see happen, what we need to move towards?
Yeah, for sure. So you hit the nail on the head, Jason. My dad, is like, well, I played football, so I can tell you, yeah. And I'm like, oh gosh, Dad, no. And and then it's still a joke of ours. We had a mom in one of the girls on my college team, and she would say, just kick it. And so that's still a joke we say now, and I'm like, oh my gosh, if I hear a parent say, just kick it one more time, that's not it. So, man, it's a struggle. I think it even starts with, and I'm sorry, I have my notifications going off here. I think it even starts with the parent meeting that coaches need to set.
Or a shot across the bow.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So that's from the beginning. And when I coach, even before I had kids and I was just coaching for fun in the rec league, I had a parent meeting, and I pretty much said my job's to coach, your job's to parent. You guys will be doing these things and I'll be doing the coaching. Now, with that, Could I have provided more education? Probably, because we got to the end of the season and a parent had said something. I'm like, oh yeah, that was a great idea. Like, you should have let me know. And they're like, oh, well, you had said like, and I'm like, oh crap. Like, well, I didn't mean that per se. But now through Tiny Troops, like we do have an advanced skills session, Jason. So if they're over 4.5 and they've been with us for 6 months, we let them go on to this advanced skills session. And we provide the parents a handout that's like, here's the basic soccer terms that you're going to know. Like here's things you might hear, offsides. I even have like, don't worry about it. Do not yell offsides, don't leave the offsides alone. So I think starts with your parent meeting. If the clubs could provide some sort of an easy to digest parent piece. So I'm not going to read like the FIFA laws, like here's a referee handbook, right? I'm not going to read all that. But if you told me some basic things and like, here's what to look for, and here's some things you could practice at home, and like just basic concepts, I think a lot of parents would actually appreciate that, because, soccer really is just becoming popular, right? So people aren't familiar with it. Like, and all we do know is what we see on TV. We don't know the concepts behind it. So I think that we, as clubs, you could take on an education piece for parents that would then change the landscape of what parents are saying on the sidelines, but also the help they can provide their player at home.
Yeah, as a parent, for myself, even, just using my own story, I didn't grow up playing soccer. My senior year of high school, I football, track, I swam, played water polo, and I was like, I'm in really good shape. I play polo. I'm pretty fast. I'm going to go try out for the soccer team. And I just was like, I'm athletic. I can do this. I can run, and I like to fight. I think I'd probably want to be a defender. Ended up almost making like the team, and I went to a pretty big school. Ended up, I wish I would have started my tryout process earlier, because the coach was like, I can't take you on the last day of tryouts, but I wish you would have come last week. So it is what it is. That was my soccer high school playing career. It ended before it started, but I didn't have any framework other than I'm athletic, right? I didn't know any of that stuff. And so I kind of, went to the World Cup in '94. I got to go see the U.S. play in the Rose Bowl, which was like amazing. But again, no framework back, again, I'll date myself, back, being in high school in the late '90s. And then eventually being a dad and really loving the game, falling in love to the sport, kind of with the World Cup through, the 2000s, early 2000s, and wanting that for my girls. Became a rec coach, didn't have a framework of what it meant to coach, but I knew some of the concepts that I wanted them to have. So started doing all this research and creating fun games, for my kids and on the girls on my team to play, and had a really good time. But as being a parent, not having grown up in a soccer culture, not growing up in a soccer country, because it's still growing in ours.
Right.
We see with every generation more of a broadly educated soccer basis. But most of it is the European model, right? We don't really have an American identity, but it's starting to kind of go from being very, out of focus to being more clear of what it looks like. And I just wonder, and that's a lot of things that we're trying to develop with Soccer Geeks, is that how do we actually invite every parent across the country to be to watch their kid play the game, but also be a little bit more aware of not just the tree, but see the forest through the trees a little bit more.
Right.
And what we've been developing is really educating parents and players kind of what to watch for in the game. We don't know. We just watch efforts. Like, we're Americans. Like, we love to see a spectacle of strength and athleticism. Like, fight and win. I'm a Seattle Sounder fan, so that's like their big thing. Like, come on, Seattle, fight and win. We want to see some, hard work, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and outmuscle the competition. And that's not bad. That's fantastic. But in the context of soccer, as opposed to like American football, that means some very different things.
Yes.
Being the dad of girls, I have a lot of other dads on the sideline that just love and watch NFL or NBA, and they just want to see their kids just mow everybody down. If their daughter is a center back, they want to see him dribble the ball all the way up the field and score a goal. That might be awesome. That's not what we're looking to do here. So
exactly.
How do we continue this process of educating parents to watch the game better? Like, what are some ways for you as a mom, or when you're educating other moms and dads, of how to grow a love for the game outside of even tiny troops? What are some of the ways that you've encouraged families to grow their knowledge of the game?
Yeah, so I always try to share, like, on our pages when the national teams are playing, specifically the women's team, but that, because I think that's how it starts that's how people get interested in it, is seeing like high level participation of it. So I think that's one way, like, we encourage, like, yeah, watch these games. And I think with the players becoming more well known, it's making it not so like, oh, this random soccer thing. Like, it's starting to slowly become a fabric of what we're doing. So I think, like, supporting those teams, supporting our pro teams, trying to get them more, exposure, and just make soccer a more common thing. So I think it starts there. Also with the education of the coaches, and like maybe clubs empowering coaches to kind of address those situations. For example, one of my good friends is a rec coach, and there was a parent on her team, like, just saying some rude things to the ref, and then also just saying like inaccurate soccer things. And so afterwards she addressed that person and was like, hey, just so you know, like, this is why we do this, and this is the concept behind it, and also, like, don't talk to refs that way, right? So trying to hold that person accountable. So, but I know not everyone would feel comfortable. So Jason, I don't know. I don't really have a good I haven't figured out, but I mean, like, from my perspective, I start small and do what I can in my area of impact. And so I think that's what we all could do, and maybe if you are a parent who knows a little something, or a coach that just offers to your club, like, hey, I would love to just do like a quick, like, literally soccer one-on-one for like a half hour if someone wants to do it, or, come and learn a little bit or ask questions. Like,
I
don't
know. We, again, going back to, we don't have this large base of watching soccer communally, familially, right? So the big thing that I've seen is, in my house, there's almost always a game on, like, just in the background on a TV in the house. So when anybody's popping by, or they hear terms, or they hear, the commentators talking about the game, whether it's in English or in Spanish, even though we don't have any fluent Spanish speakers in the house, like, it's still on. We continually have the game, access to the game. I think that's a really important thing, because I just don't think we're fluent in visually watching. One of the things I think is always really funny is when the coaches invite the parents to go play with the kids, and they have a parents versus kids. That's like a huge opportunity for the kids really to show off and nutmeg the parents. And my girls absolutely love that. And it's just, picking up the ball and going to the park, because like what you're even trying to do with Tiny Troops, it's about that child's relationship to the ball. Because the ball is the gateway to the game. The game is all about that ball, all about it. And so the child's relationship to the soccer ball is that is the key that opens the door for them. And really, that's the key that opens the door even for the family. And so I've always kind of looked at that. I get so excited as a dad when my kids spontaneously play with a soccer ball, when they grab the ball and they want to go outside and they want to go juggle, or like, Dad, let's hop on the e-bikes, let's go down to the park and take a couple shots. It's like, I will burn half the country down to go make those opportunities happen, because that's the game being maturing and growing in their heart, in the fluency and the culture and the language of our home. So those are some things that I've kind of seen that have kind of just grown in the culture of our house.
Yeah, and to speak of that, Jason, so that's what I remember. Like, so my dad didn't know soccer, and neither did my mom. But I want to tell you how many hours they spent with me at the park, just doing long balls and doing drills and putting up cones. So they didn't know anything, but they took the time to go with me and help as much as they could. And even now, when they're talking to my U10 player, they're like, do you know how many hours we spent in the backyard with your mom doing this? And that's impactful too. So I guess don't discredit yourself either. Like, get out there with your kid and kick the ball back and forth, even if you don't know what you're doing per se.
Yeah, so many people grew up right with a baseball and a baseball glove and just playing catch and just throwing it. There's nothing less from a sporting standpoint than just having the ball and kicking the ball back and forth, or grabbing friends in the neighborhood and doing the same thing. I didn't grow up in a home where I had that father figure, to go do that. So those were my friends or my friends' dads, but I went and found the game with whoever would play it with me type deal. And so I always think that stuff's really valuable. And for a lot of families too, on base, dad or mom might be deployed, so they're not there to have that. And so having that community is just, it's so vital and it's so important. Got a couple more things we want to round out your conversation today. One of the things I wanted to ask you is that if people wanted to get involved in Tiny Troop Soccer, or they wanted to be able to donate to the program, what are some of the most impactful ways that they can do that? How would they do that?
Yeah, so we're always looking for coaches. So you don't have to be affiliated with the military to work with us. That's just part of what makes us unique, but that is not required at all. If you love kids, you love soccer, we would love to have you on our staff, and they are paid positions. I know that's different than a lot of places, but so we welcome anyone to join us. And if we don't have a location where you are and you think it'd be a great idea, we'd love to get chat with you to possibly get one started. So tinytroopsoccer.com is where you'll find our info. Also, we do sponsorships. So like we had over Christmas, someone just said, hey, my son used to be in the Army and I saw you had this near Fort Bragg and I just want to donate, $50 and you can use that. And so then we use that to sponsor a child's month of play. So we have that. We have a book here that I wrote, I Will Be Okay, Adventures of a Military Kid. This is on Amazon, but, if you individually or if a company wants to sponsor some of these books, we make sure they get into the hands of military kids too. All that, you can find us at info@tinytroopsoccer.com, Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff.
Yeah, and we'll, folks that are listening, we're going to have all the links and everything like that in the description so that you can connect and kind of find those things really easy. What was on the top of my brain? If you were to expand to one more base, like where's the number one place right now that you're looking to expand Tiny Troops, that you're looking for some helping hands in that community? Where are you looking to expand next? Where's the need and where do you want to expand next towards? So one new one we're looking at is Fort Rucker in Alabama. So if you're close to there, let us know. Okay. Well, I don't know why that just came out. Like, so if you're in Alabama and you're close to base, like, hey, we need some active souls down there to do that. Amy, the last question we always ask, and Marissa's about ready to come and join us on the show, kind of round things out too. But the last question we always ask our guests is this: Amy, I'm giving you the wand to be able to enact one sweeping change in the soccer landscape in our country, maybe extending to military bases as well across the world. But you get to make one change in the United States in regards to soccer. What would you change with immediate effect, and to what benefit?
I would change the barrier of cost to competitive programs. I know a lot of disadvantaged communities, which military is considered a disadvantaged community, but also a lot of the minority populations. Soccer is an expensive sport. And I don't really know why, because we don't have a lot of gear that we need, right? There's not, so like, why are these costs so high? So I think that if we could lower that barrier, that could bring in what you were talking about and get more people involved with soccer. So I think that would be great.
I love it. You know what? I know how expensive competitive soccer is. I have two kids that play it. It's an immense and a huge cost. But that's kind of the price to pay to play the game right now, unfortunately. So
and it's like, why? Like, I get it. There's whoever hosts a tournament, you have expenses, but man, it just seems like it gets more and more. And then for the families, you're traveling. So that's all the meals out, the hotel, time off work, all these things that a lot of people can't afford to do.
Well, I look at it, I'm in the West Coast, I'm in San Diego. We have 70, Marissa knows, she hates to hear it, but we got 75-degree weather today in February, 300 days a year, 70-degree weather plus. We can play soccer here 12 months out of the year. I understand maybe the cost here, but then I look at other programs across the country that are playing, they can't play in weather half the year, and the cost is the same. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Yeah. Marissa, welcome back. What are your thoughts?
Thank you. Yeah, really good. I love how, we've had other conversations with coaches and players, and it comes down to fundamentals sometimes, and that's what Amy and all the coaches are doing, at the youngest age almost possible,
Mhm.
you would think. So
Yep.
it's really good to, I know you, but to get reminded of what you do and hear about the impact you're making in the community, it's pretty awesome. So
It's
Thank
awesome.
you.
we're
Thank you.
It's
glad to
great.
have you. As a reminder, you mentioned the website where you get the book or your email. You're also on social media. Can you just let us know how to get in touch with you there?
Yeah. So personally, if you want to get in touch with me, LinkedIn is great. So I'm Amy Tiny Troop Soccer on LinkedIn. I would love to connect with people there. I like to share a lot of info about women in sports, entrepreneurship. So yeah, find me there.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we enjoyed your time, your conversation with Jason, and we'll be sure to welcome you back. Hopefully, you can get some more input and say how your program's growing. So,
Yeah, for sure.
any
That'd
last
be great.
words? Any last words, Jason?
Yeah, no, Amy, just thanks so much. Thanks for what you're doing on military bases in your own neck of the woods and across the country for kids and growing the game in this country. Thanks for all your heart and passion to see the game grow in the United States.
Thanks, guys. Same to you both.